Type 1 report is most appropriate for organizations in the early stages of building their SOC 2 program. Startups or growing service providers often use Type 1 as a foundation, a tangible milestone showing auditors have validated their control design. It's particularly valuable when prospective customers or partners demand proof of progress before contracts can close. A Type 1 report can be completed relatively quickly, making it ideal when tooling maturity is still developing or operational history is limited. The key is transparency. Communicating that Type 1 is a stepping stone toward the more rigorous Type 2 report demonstrates both commitment and forward motion, even if sustained testing is not yet feasible. Conversely, a Type 2 report becomes essential as organizations mature. Enterprise customers, regulators, and long-term partners often require ongoing assurance that controls are not only designed properly, but also operated effectively across time. This is especially true for systems processing sensitive or business-critical data. Type 2 demands greater discipline. Controls must function consistently, evidence must be retained continuously, and exceptions must be tracked and remediated. Mature programs embrace this rigor because it supports a multi-year trust strategy, reducing repetitive due diligence cycles and enhancing the credibility of future renewals. In many industries, Type 2 has become the de facto expectation rather than the exception. Before pursuing either type of report, teams must establish a design documentation baseline. Policies, standards, and procedures need to reflect the current operational reality, not aspirational states. Each control description must link directly to the relevant trust services criteria, ensuring traceability between commitments and execution. Documentation should specify control owners, evidence sources, and testing frequencies. Artifacts such as change management records, access logs, and incident reports demonstrate that the design is anchored in real processes. Without this baseline, even well-executed controls appear ad hoc, undermining the credibility of both Type 1 and Type 2 evaluations. Selecting an operating period strategy is particularly critical for Type 2 planning. Organizations must determine the length of the period, commonly 6 or 12 months, and choose start and end dates that minimize operational volatility. Seasonality, release cadences, and major infrastructure changes can all influence stability and evidence quality. Teams should confirm that logging, monitoring, and data retention capabilities cover the entire chosen window. Guardrails like change freezes or strict version control help prevent uncontrolled drift that could invalidate sampling consistency. A thoughtful operating period strategy allows auditors to evaluate representative evidence, yielding a report that truly reflects ongoing control health. Every SOC 2 audit depends on disciplined sampling methods. For each control, auditors define a population, such as all access reviews performed during the period, and select samples either randomly or using a risk-based approach. Completeness and accuracy checks confirm that populations contain the correct data and are free of omissions. Each sample must then be examined to verify evidence quality, such as timestamps, approvals, and corroborating records. Exceptions are documented with severity ratings, remediation plans, and links to risk registers. Good sampling is both art and science. It demonstrates operational consistency while ensuring the audit remains efficient and credible. During auditor walkthroughs, control owners and process leads demonstrate how controls operate day to day. Auditors review documentation, trace processes through system logs, and tie evidence back to the system description for contextual clarity. Walkthroughs include discussions about control objectives, implementation methods, and testing procedures. The goal is not to pass a test, but to demonstrate transparency and command of the control environment. When auditors request clarifications or follow-up artifacts, timely and organized responses create confidence in the organization's competence. These sessions form the backbone of assurance, turning technical execution into verified trust. Understanding the difference between evidence snapshots and time series evidence helps teams collect the right artifacts for their report type. A Type 1 report relies on point-in-time snapshots, screenshots of configurations, policies, or logs captured on a specific date. Type 2, however, demands periodic or continuous evidence, such as recurring ticket approvals, access reviews, or automated monitoring outputs. Ticketing systems and audit logs often serve as the most reliable proof of control operation across months. Storing this evidence in immutable repositories with clear timestamps ensures reproducibility during audit testing. Choosing the right evidence model early prevents painful rework later. Change management forms one of the most complex and revealing parts of SOC 2 testing. Effective change control tracks all modifications to code, infrastructure, and configurations with documented approvals and risk ratings. Routine and emergency changes must follow defined workflows with testing results captured for review. After-the-fact reviews of urgent fixes verify that bypassed steps were still validated. Auditability extends to the CI/CD pipelines themselves, ensuring that version control, deployment gates, and peer reviews leave traceable records. Mature change management proves not only compliance but also organizational discipline in balancing agility with control. Access control execution is another cornerstone of both report types. Joiner, mover, and leaver processes must ensure timely provisioning and deprovisioning, supported by clear workflows and approval chains. Privileged access requires additional oversight, separate approvals, rotation schedules, and periodic reviews. Evidence must show that revoked accounts are removed promptly, and residual access is checked for closure. Break glass access, temporary emergency use of elevated permissions, should follow strict criteria and post-use review. Well-documented and consistently executed access control processes demonstrate that only the right people, at the right time, can access sensitive systems and data. Incident and problem management provide auditors with insight into an organization's responsiveness. A well-documented incident handling process includes detection, triage, containment, recovery, and communication. Evidence should show that incidents were logged, prioritized, and resolved according to defined procedures. Postmortems document root causes and track corrective actions to closure. Customer communication records, such as notifications or updates, prove transparency and accountability. For SOC 2, the goal isn't zero incidents, but demonstrable control over the response lifecycle. A repeatable incident management process builds confidence that when issues arise, they are handled systematically, not reactively. Availability and resilience testing forms the final layer of operational proof. Regular backup and restore tests demonstrate data recoverability and validate system integrity. Capacity metrics and error budgets track performance trends, while scheduled failover exercises verify continuity under real conditions. Dependency mapping identifies single points of failure and informs disaster recovery planning. Evidence from these activities, reports, metrics, and test results provides concrete proof that the organization can meet uptime and reliability commitments. By aligning resilience testing with SOC 2 timelines, companies show auditors and customers alike that reliability isn't aspirational, it's engineered and verified. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Demonstrating processing integrity requires evidence that data handled by the system remains accurate, complete, and timely throughout its lifecycle. This starts with strong input validation, ensuring that only properly formatted and authorized data enters the system. Transformation controls maintain data quality during processing, while reconciliation checks confirm that outputs match expected results. Defect tracking systems document any deviations, with rollback procedures in place when errors threaten data accuracy. Auditors may request transaction samples across the operating period to observe consistency. Processing integrity is not merely about error-free execution. It is about maintaining control and transparency in how data is managed, corrected, and verified over time. Confidentiality safeguards protect non-public information and demonstrate the organization's respect for customer and proprietary data. Controls should cover classification schemes that define how data is labeled and handled, encryption mechanisms for information at rest and in transit, and key management processes ensuring rotation and segregation. Secure disposal procedures confirm that data is permanently deleted when no longer needed, reducing unnecessary exposure. Retention policies must align with both contractual and legal obligations. If third parties access or process confidential data, their contracts must impose equivalent safeguards and audit rights. These layers form a coherent assurance narrative that sensitive information remains under deliberate, continuous protection. The privacy category demands a higher standard of operational evidence. Auditors expect a documented inventory of personal information, with clearly defined purposes for each category of data collected. Evidence of rights request workflows, such as data access, correction, or deletion, demonstrates that user entitlements are fulfilled within required timeframes. Records of consent preferences, notices, and opt-out mechanisms prove adherence to transparency commitments. When privacy incidents occur, documented investigations and notifications show compliance with legal and ethical obligations. Privacy evidence validates that individuals are not only protected by technology, but respected through policy and process, aligning operations with evolving global expectations. Exception management plays a critical role in differentiating mature programs from reactive ones. Every deviation, whether an audit finding, failed control, or missed review, must be identified, documented, and assigned a severity rating. Risk acceptance processes define who can approve exceptions and under what conditions, with timelines for remediation or compensating actions. Each open item should have a clear owner and due date, tracked through closure with retest evidence. Exceptions are inevitable, but unmanaged exceptions indicate weak governance. Effective programs treat them as opportunities for improvement, embedding accountability and transparency into the control lifecycle. Transitioning between report periods requires a careful bridging strategy. SOC 2 reports often have coverage gaps between one audit's end and the next's beginning, and bridge letters fill this space. These letters, typically issued by management, confirm that no significant changes or incidents occurred since the last audit period. They must be distributed securely and only to authorized parties, preserving confidentiality. When relevant events do occur during a gap, timely disclosures and interim assurance artifacts, such as recent penetration tests or risk assessments, maintain customer confidence. Aligning renewal cycles with customer procurement timelines ensures that assurance remains continuous and relevant. Transparent communication with stakeholders ensures that expectations around report type and timing are realistic. Early in the process, customers and partners should be informed whether the organization will produce a Type I or Type II report, what the expected publication date is, and what interim artifacts can be shared. Trust portals serve as controlled distribution points for these materials, with artifact catalogs summarizing what evidence is available and under what conditions. Non-technical readers benefit from executive summaries that explain scope, limitations, and assurance value in plain language. Sales and customer success teams need talking points and disclaimers to avoid overpromising. Well-managed communication converts the audit journey into a proactive customer engagement tool. From a planning standpoint, cost and effort differ significantly between report types. A Type 1 engagement typically requires fewer auditor hours and less internal labor, since testing is limited to design validation. Type 2 audits, by contrast, demand continuous evidence gathering, larger sample volumes, and more extensive coordination. However, automation can narrow this gap. Tools that collect logs and evidence in real time reduce both effort and risk of oversight. Over multiple cycles, Type 2 becomes more efficient as processes stabilize and artifacts are systematized. The initial cost is higher, but the long-term return is a sustainable assurance model that supports scaling without recurring startup overhead. A risk-based decision framework helps organizations choose between report types with objectivity. Key inputs include customer demand, deal velocity, control maturity, and operational stability. For example, if most buyers are enterprise level and require sustained assurance, Type 2 is the strategic choice. If the control environment is still forming, or if timelines are compressed by sales pressure, Type 1 may serve as a practical bridge. Category selection, such as adding availability or confidentiality, affects the audit's scope and workload. Ultimately, leadership's appetite for investment and timing commitments determines the right balance between speed and depth of assurance. The supporting tooling ecosystem must align with the chosen report type. Both Type 1 and Type 2 rely on integration with ticketing, access management, and change tracking systems. But Type 2 demands stronger retention and traceability capabilities. Logs, metrics, and dashboards must capture continuous data with immutable timestamps. Approval workflows and attestation records ensure transparency of accountability. Evidence packaging tools should link artifacts to specific controls and criteria, maintaining audit-ready organization. When properly configured, these systems turn compliance into an automated, always-on process, reducing human error and audit fatigue while strengthening data defensibility. Before committing to an audit, organizations should perform a readiness self-check to verify that all components are in place. The control set should be complete, documented, and traceable to the trust services criteria. Periodic evidence should exist at sufficient scale to demonstrate consistency. Teams must assess their capacity to handle auditor requests, follow-ups, and interviews without disrupting daily operations. Contingency plans should address gaps that cannot be closed before fieldwork, whether through compensating controls or deferred remediation. A structured readiness review functions as a rehearsal, ensuring that surprises are discovered internally rather than under the auditor's lens. After analysis, the organization finalizes its decision and rollout plan. This document outlines the chosen report type, rationale, and expected milestones. Audit windows and fieldwork dates are locked with the auditor to secure scheduling. Resource commitments identify control owners, program managers, and communication leads. Customers and partners are notified through formal channels, reaffirming the organization's transparency. This disciplined rollout prevents scope creep and confusion, ensuring that every participant, from engineers to executives, understands their role in delivering the final report. The outcome is a synchronized effort where technical readiness and strategic timing align perfectly. In conclusion, the choice between a Type 1 and a Type 2 SOC 2 report defines not only audit complexity, but also the maturity of an organization's trust strategy. Type 1 establishes foundational credibility, proving that systems are designed to meet commitments, while Type 2 elevates that trust by verifying sustained execution. Selecting the right path requires balancing customer demands, operational maturity, and timeline realities. By aligning evidence readiness, risk appetite, and stakeholder communication, organizations can ensure that each report, whether introductory or recurring, advances both compliance and credibility. The next step in this journey is documenting those verified systems in a well-structured system description, the anchor for every SOC 2 engagement that follows.